My name is Mara Whitaker. I was 35 when I learned what a green binder could do at a closing table. My grandfather turned 82 on a rainy Thursday. He baked peach cobbler, set out 4 bowls and waited by the window until dark. Nobody came. My mother said he would not remember. My cousin had already found a buyer for his farm. 8 days later, they sat down to sell it for $910,000. I opened the binder under his quilt, and the whole deal died in 5 minutes. But the part that still follows me is not the money. It is what Grandpa asked when I came home. He looked past me, toward the sewing chair by the window and said, "Did they leave Helen's chair?" Helen was my grandmother. She had been dead for 9 years. And somehow, in the middle of everything he was losing, that was the thing his heart still knew to protect. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything, and dignity always gets the last word. If you have ever watched someone older get treated like their life had become inconvenient, this story is for you. That Thursday began with rain. Not heavy rain. Just the thin, steady kind that makes every window look tired. I had worked a full day at the county records office, scanning deeds, indexing mortgages, correcting names people had misspelled on documents that could decide whether a house belonged to the right person. At 5:16, I got a voicemail from my grandfather. "Mara, it's Grandpa. I made too much cobbler. Don't tell your mother I used the peaches from the freezer. She says frozen peaches are for emergencies. I think being 82 is an emergency." Then he laughed, small and proud. I saved the voicemail before I even started the car. The farm was 42 minutes outside town, down a county road that still had no streetlights and no patience for people who drove too fast. My grandfather, Arthur Bell, had lived there since 1968. He bought the land with my grandmother after coming home from the Navy. He planted pear trees behind the shed, built a porch with his brother, and painted the kitchen yellow because Helen said winter needed arguing with. When I pulled into the gravel drive, the porch light was on. Every other window was dark. Inside, the kitchen table had 4 bowls, 4 spoons, 4 napkins, and 1 peach cobbler cooling in the center. He had dusted the top with cinnamon in the shape of a crooked A. Arthur. Or anniversary. Or maybe just the first letter he could still trust. He sat by the window in his brown cardigan, hands folded over one another, watching the rain hit the glass. "Grandpa." He turned. For a second his face was blank. Then it opened. "Mara, you came." "Of course I came." He looked behind me. "Is your mother parking?" "No. Just me." "Oh." That one word carried the whole table. I set my coat over a chair and tried not to look at the unused bowls. My mother, Celeste, had texted me that morning. "Too busy this week." He won't know which day it is anyway. My cousin Blake had sent a thumbs-up emoji when I reminded him. My father had not answered at all. Grandpa cut the cobbler himself. The first piece fell apart, peaches sliding into the pan. He frowned like the dessert had betrayed him. "Looks better that way," I said. He smiled. "Your grandmother used to say ugly food tastes kinder." We ate at the table with the rain tapping behind us. Halfway through his second bite, he looked at the empty chair by the window. It was Helen's sewing chair. Blue fabric faded almost gray. One arm worn smooth where her wrist had rested for 40 years. "Don't let them take that chair," he said. I put down my spoon. "Who is taking the chair?" He blinked. The sharpness vanished as quickly as it came. What chair? That was how his memory worked now. Some doors opened for seconds. Some did not open at all. At 9 I helped him to bed. He was lighter than he should have been. His hand felt dry and papery in mine. When I pulled the quilt over him, he caught my wrist. "Green binder," he whispered. "What?" "Under Helen's quilt. Not the red one. The green one." Then he slept. I stood there in the dim room, listening to the old house creak in the rain. There are houses that remember for people. The farm remembered everything Grandpa was beginning to lose. The doorway where he measured my height in pencil until I was 12. The pantry shelf where Grandma hid butterscotch. The table scar from the year Blake dropped a screwdriver and blamed the dog. The sewing chair by the window. To someone else it was furniture. To Grandpa it was proof that Helen had been there. The next morning I found the first sign in the barn. Not a for sale sign. That would have been too honest. A lockbox. It was clamped to the side door near the rusted milk cans, tucked just behind a coil of hose. I had seen enough property transfers at work to know exactly what it meant. Realtors use lockboxes when they expect strangers to walk through a property without the owner answering the door. I went back inside and opened the mail basket. There were utility bills, seed catalogs, a church newsletter, and under all of it, a printed email from Harrow and Finch Realty. Subject line: off-market interest confirmed. The property address was Grandpa's farm. Estimated sale price: $910,000. Buyer: Northridge Holdings, LLC. Seller representative: Blake Bell. My cousin. I sat at the kitchen table with the email in my hand and the leftover cobbler between us like a witness. Grandpa shuffled in wearing one slipper and one shoe. "Morning," he said. "Did Helen feed the chickens?" "We don't have chickens anymore." He nodded, accepting that the way he accepted weather. My phone buzzed. "Celeste. Don't make this emotional, Mara. Blake is helping with a care plan. The farm is too much for Dad now." I looked at the lockbox through the window. Care plan. That was how people did it. They did not say, "We are selling his home," without making sure he understands. They said care plan, transition, practical choice, family responsibility. Alarm and theft rarely walk in wearing their real names. They arrive with forms. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, bright and busy. "Mara, I'm walking into a meeting. There's a lockbox on Grandpa's barn." Silence. Then a sigh. "Blake said you would overreact. There's an email about a sale. It's preliminary. It says buyer confirmed. He cannot keep that place, Mara. He leaves burners on. He wanders at night. He called me Helen twice last week." "So you sell his farm?" "We use the money for proper memory care. And Blake's company will manage the transition." "There it is." "What?" "Blake's company." Her voice hardened. "Your cousin has put more into this family than you know. He put a lockbox on an 82-year-old man's barn. Mara, your grandfather will not remember that farm by Christmas." I looked at the sewing chair. "Then it's a good thing I do." I hung up. That afternoon, I searched for the green binder. Helen's quilt was in the cedar chest at the foot of Grandpa's bed. Blue and white squares, hand-stitched, smelling faintly of lavender and cedar. Beneath it sat a green binder with a label in Grandpa's block print. "For Mara, when they start saying it is for my own good." My hands went cold. Inside were documents I recognized. A recorded deed transferring the farm into the Arthur Bell Living Trust, dated 18 months earlier. A durable power of attorney naming me as successor agent. A letter from Dr. Elaine Porter, dated the same week, stating that Arthur Bell understood the nature of his property, the trust, and the person he was choosing to protect it. A transcript of a capacity interview recorded by an attorney named Helen Park. A handwritten note on yellow paper. "Ma, if I am not making sense every day by the time you read this, remember that I was making sense when I wrote it. I know Celeste will listen to Blake. I know Blake will see acres before he sees me. I know your father will wait for someone else to be brave. You know records. You know paper. Use that. Do not let them sell Helen's chair out from under me. I love you, Grandpa." I read it once. Then again. Then I pressed my palm flat over his handwriting because it felt like the closest thing to holding his hand while he was still clear. People think dementia erases a person all at once. It does not. It takes uneven bites. A man can forget where the forks are and still know who is safe. He can ask for a wife who is gone and still know which granddaughter will tell the truth. He can lose Tuesday and keep love. That is what my family was counting on people not understanding. The next file I found was in the laundry room drawer. A new power of attorney dated 3 weeks earlier, naming Celeste as agent and Blake as property manager. Attached to it was a listing authorization for Harrow and Finch Realty. The signature made my throat close. Grandpa's signature in the green binder was heavy and square. The A had a flat top. The B and Bell leaned forward. He had signed like a man who expected paper to behave. The new signature trembled. The A collapsed. The pen lifted 3 times between Arthur and Bell. I checked the date. 3 weeks earlier. The same week he had been treated for a urinary tract infection that caused delirium. I knew because I drove him home from urgent care while my mother said she had a bored dinner. They had him sign property papers the week he was confused from an infection. I took photos of everything. Then I called Helen Park. Her office was downtown, above a pharmacy that still sold postcards of the courthouse. She answered her own phone at 7:40 the next morning, which told me she had been waiting. "Mara Whitaker," she said. "He said you would call," with a steady voice and shaking hands. I looked down. My hands were shaking. By noon I was in her conference room. She had silver hair, rimless glasses, and the calm expression of a woman who had watched families pretend greed was grief for 30 years. "Your grandfather came to me 18 months ago," she said. "He was afraid he was slipping. More than that, he was afraid of who would benefit when he slipped. Blake. And Celeste," she said gently. I looked at the table. "She's my mother." "Yes." That was all she said. Sometimes a good lawyer knows when a word has already done enough damage. Helen walked me through the trust. The farm belonged to the trust. Grandpa had been trustee while he had capacity. I became successor trustee when his doctor certified incapacity. The later power of attorney could not control trust property, and it was likely invalid anyway because of the delirium and the lack of an independent capacity evaluation. "The closing is in 8 days, I said. Helen nodded. "Then we let them bring everyone to one table." "You don't want to file first?" "We can. But if the title officer sees a recorded trust deed, an active incapacity certification, and a disputed power of attorney, no responsible title officer will ensure the sale. So the papers stop it." "The truth stops it," she said. "The papers make them listen." For the next 7 days I counted. Day 1 I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. The intake worker did not sound shocked. That was the saddest part. She asked for dates, names, diagnosis, documents, sale price, buyer relationship, who stood to profit. She had heard this story before with different wallpaper. Day 2, Helen requested updated medical records. My mother had already tried to restrict access to Grandpa's chart. Helen used the older healthcare authorization in the binder. It worked. Day 3, I requested certified copies of the recorded trust deed from the county records office. The clerk who handed them to me was someone I had trained 2 summers earlier. She looked at my face and did not ask questions. Day 4 my father came to the farm. He parked by the pear trees and sat in the car for 12 minutes. When he came inside, Grandpa was asleep in his chair. Dad stood in the doorway looking at him like he had arrived too late to a conversation he had been avoiding for years. "I don't like how Blake is handling this," he said. "Then stop it." He rubbed both hands over his face. "Your mother says it's already too far along. Things only get too far along when everyone keeps walking." He looked at me. For a second, I saw the man who taught me to ride a bike, who checked under my bed for monsters, who cried at Grandma Helen's funeral when he thought nobody saw him. Then his phone buzzed. "Celeste." He looked down, and the man disappeared. "I should go," he said. He did not wake Grandpa to say goodbye. That is a kind of signature too. People think only the person holding the pen participates. They forget that silence signs things every day. Day 5 Blake came. He walked in through the back door, holding a coffee he had not brought for anyone else. "Cousin," he said, smiling too wide. "Heard you found the paperwork." "I found the trust." His smile tightened. "Grandpa doesn't know what a trust is anymore. He knew when he made it. You always were dramatic. You always did mistake inconvenience for drama." He put the coffee down on the counter. "Listen. The buyer is real. The money is real. The memory facility is real. This farm is falling apart, and Arthur is not getting better." "You mean Grandpa?" "What? You called him Arthur." Blake rolled his eyes. "This is exactly why Celeste wanted you kept out of it." I looked at him, then really looked. Expensive jacket. Clean boots that had never worked a field. A man who saw 22 acres road frontage and a quick management fee. "You need this sale," I said. His jaw moved. "Everyone needs this sale." "No. You need it." He picked up his coffee and left without another word. Day 6 Helen called the title company. She did not threaten. She did not accuse. She simply asked whether the preliminary title report reflected the Arthur Bell Living Trust. The title officer, A woman named Marjorie Lane went quiet. That silence told us enough. Day 7, I baked peach cobbler with Grandpa. He measured cinnamon 3 times and forgot sugar once. We fixed it. He peeled one peach so slowly the fruit browned before he finished. We used it anyway. At the table, he looked toward Helen's chair. Tomorrow, he asked. I froze. What about tomorrow? They come for the land tomorrow. His eyes were clear. Not for long, but long enough. Yes, I said. Are you going? Yes. He nodded. Wear blue. Helen trusted blue. So the next morning I wore a blue blouse. Conference room C at Mercer Title was smaller than I expected. 10 chairs, a water pitcher, a printer, a bowl of peppermints nobody touched. I arrived with Helen Park at 1:52. The green binder was in my bag. Marjorie Lane, the title officer, sat at the head of the table with 2 neat stacks of documents. She had gray eyes and the posture of someone who did not enjoy surprises but knew how to process them. Celeste arrived first. Pearls. Camel coat. The same controlled smile she used in photographs where she wanted people to see service, not power. Blake came behind her, phone in hand. My father followed, pale and quiet. The realtor arrived next, a man named Vince Harrow, carrying folders with color-coded tabs. Then the buyer's representative, Northridge Holdings, navy suit, no expression. My mother saw me and stopped. Mara, she said, this is not appropriate. I pulled out a chair. I agree. Then I sat. Helen sat beside me and placed her briefcase on the table. Marjorie looked at her. Ms. Park, I understand you have documents relevant to title. I do. My mother's smile moved 1 inch and died there. Helen opened her briefcase. She placed the first certified document on the table. This is the recorded deed transferring the property at 1180 Bell Farm Road into the Arthur Bell Living Trust, recorded 18 months ago. Marjorie picked it up. Vince Harrow shifted in his chair. Helen placed the second document down. This is the trust instrument naming Mara Whitaker as successor trustee upon Arthur Bell's incapacity. Blake leaned forward. We have a newer power of attorney. Helen did not look at him. She placed the third document down. This is Dr. Elaine Porter's capacity evaluation from the date the trust was executed, confirming Mr. Bell understood the nature of the property, the trust, and his chosen trustee. Then the fourth. This is Dr. Porter's current letter confirming incapacity as of last week, activating the successor trustee provision. My mother stood halfway. My father signed a power of attorney giving me authority. Helen placed the fifth document down. This is the urgent care record from the same week that document was signed. It notes acute confusion related to infection and recommends follow-up before major decisions. The power of attorney also does not control property already held in trust. The room went very still. Marjorie read. She checked the title file. She looked at Vince Harrow. Mr. Harrow, your office represented that the trust had been dissolved. Vince's face changed color. I was told by the family. Was a reconveyance deed recorded? Marjorie asked. He said nothing. Helen answered for the room. No, because the trust was never dissolved. The buyer's representative closed his folder. Blake's hand flattened on the table. This is insane. We have a signed contract. You have a contract signed by people without authority to sell trust property, Helen said. Marjorie set the documents down, aligned the edges, and looked around the table. I cannot close this transaction. 5 words. That was all. No thunder. No shouting. No judge with a gavel. Just 5 words and $910,000 evaporating from the wrong hands. My mother turned to me. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I did. You are destroying this family over a rotting farmhouse. I thought of Grandpa waiting by the window with 4 bowls on the table. I thought of Helen's chair. I thought of the green binder under the quilt, and a man writing clearly while he still could because he knew his own daughter would someday call him too confused to matter. No, I said. I am stopping you from selling a man while pretending it's land. Blake stood so fast his chair hit the wall. My financing depends on this. The buyer's representative looked at him. That is not our problem. My father covered his face with one hand. My mother started to cry then. Loud, wounded tears. Tears meant for witnesses. After everything I have carried, she said. After everything I have done for him. Helen closed the green binder. For the record, she said, Adult Protective Services has an active report regarding attempted financial exploitation. Any further attempt to sell, encumber, remove property from, or access trust assets without the trustee's authority will be treated as a legal matter. My mother stopped crying. That is how I knew the tears were not in charge. She looked at me with something colder underneath. You will regret choosing paperwork over blood. I stood. No. I chose the blood you forgot was still a person. I walked out with the green binder against my chest. Outside the air was cold and bright. Rain had washed the sidewalks clean. I stood beside Helen Park for a moment, breathing like someone who had been underwater for years and had only just noticed. You did well, she said. I didn't do much. You listened to a man before everyone else decided he was gone. I drove back to the farm with the binder on the passenger seat. The house was still there. The pear trees were still there. The sewing chair was still by the window. Grandpa was in the kitchen, turning an empty spoon in his hand. Did we eat? He asked. Not yet. Oh, good. I knelt beside him. It's done. The farm is safe. He looked at me. The words took a long time to land. Then his eyes moved to the window. Did they leave Helen's chair? I swallowed. Yes. They left the chair. He nodded once. Good girl. Then he asked if the Navy had called. I made grilled cheese. We ate at the kitchen table while the late sun came through the yellow curtains. He forgot about the closing before the cheese cooled. But he did not forget the chair. His hand touched the back of it twice as he passed. That is what people miss about memory. It is not only dates and names. Sometimes memory is the hand reaching for a chair because love sat there for 40 years. Here is what happened after. Blake's bridge loan collapsed. Without the sale proceeds, he could not close on the warehouse project. He had already promised 3 investors. He sold his truck, then his boat. Then he stopped coming to family events, which was easy because we stopped having them. Vince Harrow was reported to the State Real Estate Commission. I do not know what happened after that. I only know his sign never appeared on our road again. Adult Protective Services substantiated the financial exploitation concern. The newer power of attorney was challenged and set aside. The court confirmed me as successor trustee and legal guardian for Grandpa's affairs. My mother sent one email. You always needed to be the hero. I did not answer. There are people who call you dramatic because they are counting on your silence. My father came in February. He brought a bag of groceries and stood on the porch like a boy waiting to be invited into a principal's office. I should have stopped it, he said. Yes, I said. He nodded. No excuses. That mattered. Not enough to erase the chair in conference room C where he sat silent while they tried to sell his father's farm, but enough to begin somewhere small. He visits now on Sundays. He fixes what is broken. Gutters. Door hinges. The step by the pantry. He does not ask for forgiveness. He brings peach ice cream and lets Grandpa call him by his brother's name without correcting him too fast. That is not redemption. It is repair. Repair is slower. As for me, I left the records office 6 months later and took a job with Helen Park. Elder law. Trusts. Guardianship. The paperwork thing, as my mother once called it. Funny how the thing people mock in you is sometimes the exact thing that saves someone. Every Thursday I bake something with Grandpa. Sometimes cobbler. Sometimes biscuits. Once a cake so flat he called it a pancake with ambition. He forgets my name some days. Other days he knows me before I reach the porch. But every time I put the green binder back under Helen's quilt, I remember that he planned for the days he could not fight. He did not disappear when he got confused. He became harder to hear. That is different. A person's worth does not expire when their memory starts to fade. A house is not just an asset when it is the last map someone has of themselves. And family is not proven by who says they are helping. It is proven by who slows down long enough to ask, what did he want when he still had the words? So check the directives. Read the trust. Ask the uncomfortable questions before the lockbox appears on the barn door. If there is someone in your life who is getting easier for others to dismiss, sit with them. Listen while the door is still open. Write down what matters. Keep the chair. Keep the recipe. Keep the piece of them that money would turn into square footage. Because one day, you may be the only person in the room who remembers what they wanted. And when that day comes, do not raise your voice first. Open the binder. Let the truth sit on the table. Then stay long enough to make sure nobody carries the chair away. Disclaimer. This video is created for the sole purpose of entertainment. All situations, characters, and stories in this video are fictional and are built entirely using artificial intelligence technology. We hope you have a relaxing time.